Islam. And they make them Pax at the More, Infinite Lucem. What up? I am John NWAR. Welcome to NWAR Astrology. Today is Friday, the 18th of December, 2020. Happy Holy Day. And we are coming up on the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius in just a few days on the 21st of December. So today is going to be all about the Saturn-Jupiter in Aquarius energy and the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius energy. I was doing a bit of research on it and I decided I want to do a little something different today. So I compiled my notes and made a little kind of presentation. So we're going to get into that. And I'm sure you've heard of the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. It is also known as the Great Conjunction. It has a bit of a mythos behind it. And these two planets, Saturn and Jupiter themselves, have very archetypical energies that oversee a lot of the energies of our lives. So this is something very important to pay attention to. I'm sure you've seen it all over the internet. There's a lot of hype around what's going to happen on December 21st on this great conjunction. This is also known as a great mutation, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. A lot of people think that a lot of different things are going to happen on December 21st of 2020. Some people are correlating it to the Mayan prophecy and 2012, the end of an era, an apocalypse. Others are looking at it as the beginning of an ascension to a 5D reality. Others are talking about UFO first contact with extraterrestrials. Some people are looking at it as spiritual ascension. Others, a great disclosure of information. The Saturn-Jupiter conjunction is also known as the Christmas star or the Bethlehem star. This goes back to the mythos of Jesus Christ and the story of the three wise men. This is what they are reportedly said to have seen and followed to find him. So there's a lot of hype around this conjunction, and for sure it's definitely going to be an energy that we are going to feel. Some are saying that is the beginning of the age of Aquarius. The age of Aquarius deals 100% with information and social structures. So there's a lot of information going on, and I wanted to just break down some of the astrological information behind this energy as well as some of the mythos, and share some of my thoughts on what I think the age we're coming into is. So let's get into it. Saturn, Jupiter in Aquarius. The grand mutation. So Saturn is in Aquarius from 2020 until 2023. It takes Saturn about 27 to 30 years to travel around the zodiac. This is what we call the Saturn return, as I'm sure most people have heard of. If you haven't heard of Saturn return, every 27 to 30 years, Saturn makes its way around the zodiac back to the point where it was exactly on your natal chart. So it takes you 27 years to go into your first Saturn return. This is going to be the Saturn return for the early 90s babies. Anyone born in 91, 2, or 3, I believe. What a time to be going through your Saturn return, right? I just went through mine a few years ago. I'm 32 now, so I know what it's like, and these times right now, it's very interesting to be going through a Saturn return because the world and the structures that we thought were going to be there are shifting and changing and being demolished and being rebuilt. So what a time to be alive. So Saturn spends 2.5 to 3 years in each sign. So Saturn was in Aquarius earlier this year from March 22nd until July 1st of 2020. Then Saturn retrograded into Capricorn from July 2nd until December 16th of 2020. Now Saturn is back in Aquarius as of December 17th, which was yesterday, and it will remain there until March 7th of 2023. So this is the beginning of a 3-year cycle. That's also going to be the beginning of a 27 to 30-year cycle. Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius. So Saturn and Jupiter make conjunctions around every 20 years. These conjunctions take place in a given element for about 200 years. Fire, earth, water, or air. This is their first time in an air element conjunction in 794 years. So this is very historic time right now. The last time I believe Saturn and Jupiter met this close in the sky was in 1623, and then the last time it was in air signs, I believe, was like 1220 something like that, I believe. So Saturn rules both Capricorn and Aquarius, and it's responsible for everything that goes on in Capricorn and Aquarius. Aquarius is Saturn's second home. Uranus is also the co-ruler of Aquarius. Saturn in Capricorn deals with rules, structure, around confinement, control. It's materialism, it's material-based, and it's earth-based. Saturn in Aquarius deals with revolution, structure around freedom. It's lone wolf eccentricity. It's the oddball. It's the black swan. It deals with tribes, small groups, and it's air-based. So we're moving from a series of conjunctions in earth signs, very earth-based energy, to now into air signs. Now Saturn is the great malefic, meaning it is harsh or negative or constraining energies. It's the taskmaster planet. Saturn is the planet of time, the past and the future. Deals with reality. Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius, the 10th and 11th houses, and governs rules, structure, isolation, suffering. It deals with rejection. It governs discipline, measurement, consistency, commitment, boundaries, and karma. Representative of the gods Kronos, Saturn, or Satan, right? Set. It deals with the patriarchy, the old, usurpation, and rebellion. So looking a little bit into the mythology, I wanted to read you a little bit of mythology on Kronos. In Greek mythology, Kronos was the leader and the youngest of the first generation of Titans, the divine descendants of URANUS, the sky, and Gaia, the earth. He overthrew his father and ruled during the mythological Golden Age, until he was overthrown by his son Zeus and imprisoned in Tartarus. According to Plato, however, the deities Phorcys, Kronos, and Rhea were eldest children of Oceanus and Tethys. Kronos was usually depicted with a harpy or a scythe or a sickle, which was the instrument he used to castrate and depose Uranus, his father. In ancient myth recorded by Hesiod's Theogony, Kronos envied the power of his father, ruler of the universe, Uranus. Uranus drew the enmity of Kronos' mother Gaia when he hid the gigantic youngest children of Gaia, the 100-headed Hecatoncheires and the one-eyed Cyclops in Tartarus, so that they would not see the light. Gaia created a great stone sickle and gathered together Kronos and his brothers to persuade them to castrate Uranus. Only Kronos was willing to do the deed, so Gaia gave him the sickle and placed him in ambush. When Uranus met with Gaia, Kronos attacked him with a sickle, castrating him and casting his testicles into the sea. From blood that spilled out from Uranus and fell upon the earth, Gigantes, Erinyes, and Mylae were produced. Testicles produced a white throne from which the goddess Aphrodite emerged. For this, Uranus threatened vengeance and called his son Titans for overstepping their boundaries and daring to commit such an act. Jupiter. Jupiter is the great benefic. This is a very kind, beneficial, expansive energy. So Jupiter is the planet of growth, expansion, prosperity, healing, good fortune, and miracles. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, it's the 9th house, and it governs long distance travel, foreign cultures, big business, wealth, higher education, religion, and law. It's representative of the gods Jove, or Jupiter, Zeus, Heru, or Horus, Jesus, or Jesus, or Yeshua. Mythology on Jupiter, or Zeus. Zeus is the sky and thunder god in ancient Greek religion, who rules the king of the gods at Mount Olympus. His name is cognate with the first element of his Roman equivalent, Jupiter. His mythology and powers are similar, though not identical, to those that of Indo-European deities such as Jupiter. Zeus is the child of Cronus, which is Saturn, right? And Rhea, the youngest of his siblings to be born. They'll sometimes reckon the eldest as the others require disgorging from Cronus' stomach. Cronus sired several children by Rhea, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, but swallowed them all as soon as they were born, since he had learned from Gaia and Uranus that he was destined to be overthrown by his son, as he had previously overthrown Uranus, his own father. After reaching manhood, Zeus forced Cronus to disgorge first the stone, which was set down at Pytho under the glens of Parnassus to be assigned to mortal men, the omphalos. Then his siblings in reverse order of swallowing. In some versions, Metis gave Cronus an emetic, which is like a poison, to force him to disgorge the babies. Or Zeus cut Cronus' stomach open, disemboweling him. Then Zeus released the brothers of Cronus, the Hecatonkires and the Cyclops, from their dungeons in Tartarus, Tartarus is like an inner world in this mythology. It could be maybe seen similar to like the underworld as well, inside of the earth. Uranus, the Great Awakener. Uranus is the planet of growth, revolution, sudden changes, shocks, freedom. Uranus co-rules the 11th house with Saturn and governs society, science, electricity, enlightenment, and ingenuity. Uranus has correlations to the god Uranus, or Uranus, Caelus, Anu, Kumarabis, Teshub, Nut, Asar, Set, and Heru. Uranus was the primal Greek god personifying the sky and one of the Greek primordial deities. Uranus is also associated with the Roman god Caelus. Caelus was a primal god of the sky in Roman myth and theology, iconography, and literature. The deity's name usually appears in masculine grammatical form when he is conceived as of male generative force, but the neuter form, Calum, is also found as a divine personification. We'll get back to that neuter thing. In ancient Greek literature, Uranus or Father Sky was the son and the husband of Gaia, or primordial Earth Mother. According to Hesiod's theogony, Uranus was conceived by Gaia alone, which is like a virgin birth, but other sources cite Aether as his father. Uranus and Gaia were the parents of the first generations of Titans and the ancestors of most of the Greek gods. In the Olympian creation myth, as Hesiod tells it in the theogony, Uranus came every night to cover the earth and mate with Gaia, but he hated his children that she bore him. Hesiod named their first 6 sons and 6 daughters the Titans, the 3 100-handed giants, the Hecatonkires, and the one-eyed giants, the Cyclops. Uranus imprisoned Gaia's youngest children in Tartarus, deep within Earth, where they caused pain to Gaia. She shaped a great flint-bladed sickle and asked her son to castrate Uranus. Only Cronos, the youngest son and most ambitious of the Titans, was willing. He ambushed his father and castrated him. And so this is, again, that same story from the other position. I also wanted to get into the Babylonian, we'll talk about Anu and Kumarabis and Teshub. So the Greek creation myth is similar to the Hurrian creation myth. In a Hurrian religion, Anu is the sky god. His son Kumarabis bit off his genitals and spat out 3 deities, one of whom Teshub later deposed Kumarabis. Kurarus is the chief god of the Hurrians. He is the son of Anu and father of storm god Teshub. Teshub was the Hurrian god of the sky, thunder, and storms. Taru was the name of a similar Haddic storm god. Taru kind of sounds like Heru, right? And so, like, I saw a lot of connections here to Asur, Set, and Heru as well, the Assyrian saga. Asur, Set, Heru. Eldest of 4 offspring from the sky god Geb and the earth goddess Nut. Asur became wise lord and king of Kemet, where he ruled successfully with Set, his wife. The respect Asur was able to command both on earth and in the netherworld as the bringer of civilization made his younger brother Set so jealous that he murdered and cut the king into 14 pieces, which he scattered throughout the wilderness to prevent Asur's resurrection. And so when he does this, he also cuts off his phallus and he throws it into the Nile River. Set then ascended to the throne, leaving Set to roam the land in search for each of her husband's pieces, which, minus his still missing penis, she reassembled and mummified. However, through the summoning of magical powers, she resurrected Asur, and she made him a golden phallus. Asur was able to posthumously impregnate Set with the seed of their son Heru, also known as Horus, who went on to avenge his father's murder and challenge Set for the throne. Although Asur went on to become lord of the afterlife, the trinity of Asur, Set, and Heru and their associated miracles were the immediate precursor to the Greco-Roman versions of the Bible. And here we see the same thing between the trinity of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And we also have correlations between Set and Satan, or the story of Lucifer, who rebelled against God in heaven and then was cast down. So we have these same themes of usurpation and rebellion. Set versus Heru, younger son of Nut and Geb, younger brother of Asur in the Ennead of Heliopis. Set was considered a very strong and potentially powerful friend, but was also an unpredictable, dangerous, and strange god. After all, he is reputed to have murdered and mutilated his older brother in order to ascend to the throne as king of Kemet. But Set also became marked for his warped sexual habits, particularly as a bisexual and a pedophile whose failed attempt to rape his underage nephew Heru became central to his legacy. According to Assyrian mythology, Set had several wives and concubines, including Nephthys, whose unhappiness in the relationship with her husband included the way he attained his kingship. Nevertheless, despite being later married to the goddess of childbirth Taweret, as well as the Canaanite fertility goddess Astarte, Set remained childless and unconventional situation by the standards of Kemet. However, it is thought that Set's infertility was exacerbated by the fact that one of his testicles had been torn off by Heru during a key episode in their ongoing battle, in which Set, for his part, tore off one of his nephew's eyes. This is Heru avenging his father. Astrology of Aquarius. Aquarius deals with social groups, communities, hopes, long-term goals, the future thinking, humanitarianism, gnosis, knowledge. Aquarius is all about social communities, what keeps them together or what breaks them apart. Now, Aquarius is the water bearer. Aquarius is an air sign. A lot of people confuse it because aqua is in there, right? But it's the water in this essence is the ethers, is information. And Aquarius deals with the information age. It is an air sign. The ether is a mixture of the water and the air, the etheric cosmic net that binds us. Aquarius has some correspondence with Ganymede. So this goes back to the Olympian Greek mythos. Zeus at one point goes down and kidnaps Ganymede, a young boy, from the earth and brings him up to Mount Olympus to be his water bearer, his cup bearer, which is why it has association with Aquarius. Some of the themes that really stood out to me the most were these ideas of rebellion and usurpation and the shifting from the old guard to the new, but also the idea of Kronos eating its young, and the idea of the patriarchy and the symbolism of the castrating of this malefic energy, and also the divine feminine aspect, both in the divine feminine of Aset, as well as Heru, also known sometimes as Heru, to bring balance back. Like the Mayans predicted, this is the end of an era, an apocalypse of sorts. It's also the dawning of a new age, the age of information. Will there be contact with extraterrestrial life? Perhaps, maybe. I'm of the mind that that's not news, that's nothing new. I know that that is a new disclosure to a lot of mainstream society, but I don't think that that's anything that would really shock the world if we were to find out that aliens were among us. Will we experience cosmic DNA activation and spiritually ascend to a 5-dimensional reality? Yeah, I think so. But I also think that's something that's really gonna be felt more by those who've already been on the journey, by everyone who's been doing the work to spiritually ascend these last several years. I think there's gonna be a massive shift in the way in which we do everything social, in the way in which we look at our social lives. And this has already been something that's occurred all year. If 2020 is any sort of projection for what this decade is gonna be like, if this conjunction happening on the 21st is any sort of projection for what the next 20 years is gonna be like, if what the next 200 years is gonna be like, for what the age of Aquarius is going to be like, then for sure, we are experiencing a massive shift in our reality right now. There's gonna be a lot of shifts in the way we deal with one another. I think the biggest shock is going to be a massive, rapid awakening of disclosure of truth, of information, a gnosis of people understanding sovereignty and government and law and structure, of people understanding that the powers that be, that the people who rule over them, who seek to rule over them, are in fact playing out these very same archetypes. These societies, these governments eat their young. I think we're going to understand that the power is truly in our hands, and that the way in which we decide to govern ourselves and our local communities and our tribes is really going to dictate the future. The greatest thing we're going to experience is probably going to be a shift in the way in which we govern ourselves as well as our communities. Whereas before, larger societies were more open and free. Let's say if you were at a state fair, right? Or you're in the park, and smaller societies were more restricted and regimented, like let's say a church or perhaps a fraternity. Whereas now it's going to shift, and larger societies are going to be more controlled, more restricted, more measured, more rules dictating whether or not you are allowed to travel, whether or not you are allowed to go to work, whether or not you are allowed to go to a concert or to the movies, whether or not you can get health care, whether or not you're allowed to see a family member. All of these things are going to be laden with rules and regulations as we move forward. and private societies, smaller societies, such things as social clubs, groups, civic organizations, faith-based organizations, these are going to be more free and unrestricted. It is going to be evidently clear that big government and big media have one objective, and that is control. A lot of people are going to be forced to reevaluate the trust that they have placed on these institutions over their lives and their decision making and the ways in which they choose to associate and treat their neighbor. A lot of people are going to rebel against it and branch off and start their own societies and govern their own societies. And many people will go with the status quo, go with what is comfortable. It was important to note Uranus because as soon as the Saturn and Jupiter conjunction happens in Aquarius, right, on the 21st of December at 0 degrees and 29 minutes, which is exactly, I believe, 11:37 a.m., Uranus, which is in Taurus, is also going to be squaring this Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius. Now, Uranus, as we spoke about, deals with revolution and electricity, innovation, experimentation, and rebellion. Taurus is our house of values, and it deals with money, and it also deals with love. This is important for everyone to look at what is their second house, what is their Taurian house, where does that sit, what planets are there, and that'll let you know what affects you. For me, for instance, my second house is Sagittarius, which deals with higher knowledge. It is also the house of society that we've been speaking about, and it deals with education, it deals with sage wisdom, knowledge, right? Foreign cultures, and ascension. This is exactly why I'm making these astrology videos. So all of that is important to note because our values are going to be shaken up with this Uranian influence as this conjunction happens. And it's definitely going to be dealing with society at large. Saturn and Jupiter in Capricorn versus Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius. So I made this sort of graph with these little icons here, with the ones on the left-hand side dealing more with the Saturn and Capricorn, Saturn-Jupiter conjunction Capricorn energy, and the ones on the right-hand side dealing more with the Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius energy. And just a reminder, Saturn in Capricorn governs rules, structure around confinement, control, material, and it is earth-based. Saturn in Aquarius deals with revolution, structure around freedom. It's the lone wolf eccentricity. It's tribes, small groups, and it's air-based. So dealing with these conjunctions as they took place in earth signs over the last several hundred years, and especially now we're just coming from Saturn, Jupiter, Capricorn, we're shifting from these very earth-based solid structures into these more Aquarius air-based structures. So whereas we would have been living before in cities and, you know, castles, citadels, and cities in large populations, there's going to become a lot more confinement dealing with Saturn and Jupiter expanding the confinement in the larger areas, whereas opposed to living in more colony-based suburban environments are going to provide more freedom, as there will not be as many people and there won't be as much infrastructure and government to get in the way. I also see a big shift in the way in which we communicate in our institutions, like our jobs. There's a lot of this 2020 energy, what we've been experiencing this year is what is gonna be coming into, and so we really need to get used to it. I know the words, the new normal, have been going around, and that's something that a lot of people don't want to accept. And perhaps there are aspects of it which we should not and we shan't not accept. but there are aspects of it that are here to stay for the time being, and we need to learn how to adapt or decide which side, which reality we want to exist in. So whereas we used to have structures in buildings and offices, our jobs would be in buildings where we would meet. The company would come together in an office building, hundreds of people. We are now working from home digitally online. Money is moved from ore and gems and minerals into paper, and now it's becoming digital currency. Energy, right? We used to have to plug in, but now we have Ethernet and travel and transportation. We went from cartography and maps to satellites and GPS. And you can kind of just see it there on the graph. I also wanted to just note transportation is something that's big because that's a big social aspect. Before, we were thinking of larger international transportation of goods and services, whereas now it's going to be a lot more locally based. So we're not going to be able to count on transportation of food from other countries in the ways in which we could before. Now it's going to be about farming, and it's going to be about locally sourced goods and locally sourced foods. Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius. Final note. So Saturn, Jupiter in Aquarius is future thinking. It's telepathic communication. So whereas we used to write letters, now we're on the telephone. And yes, perhaps when this conjunction happens, there will be those of us who will be advancing in our psychic acuity, and telepathic communication will come into the forefront of mainstream society, and it will be something that is known about and accepted. This is a time of redefining and solidifying our values and disciplines involved with and around our communities. Time to find your tribe. Engage in civic efforts and organizations. Think local community projects. A serious focus on personal preference over large status quo collective norms. So a collective norm that is coming up very likely is that in order to travel from country to country, a person may very well have to be vaccinated and tracked. Whereas that may not work for everybody. And so living in a smaller community will afford someone the ability to travel locally and not go with the norms, but still live within the structure that has been set up. This is going to be the age of information versus the war of information. We have seen this all year in 2020, opposing sides, what people believe is fake news involved with the, and this is, I'll call it the conspiracy-demic. See, I can't even say those words because as we are in this war of information and this age of information, there's massive, massive censorship happening across all social media platforms. A big thing that's happening is that people are realizing that the news media is not to be trusted. Free speech is being attacked. This is a war of ideals. The attention economy is what is the new currency. How many eyeballs can we keep on our videos? There's a war for attention. And issues around time and structure, measurement and constraint around all things social and humanitarian. Increase in restriction, limitation, divides. Tribalism, factions, and idealism will increase. Connect, enlighten, ascend. Your soul tribe awaits. So my final thoughts on the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. Is it going to be a big one? Yes, for sure. It's definitely going to shift reality as we know it. There's going to be a shakeup that affects us at our societal core values. The ways in which we interact are going to change. I think the biggest shift is going to be a disclosure of a lot of information. I think a lot of information that has been out is going to be resurfacing. I think a lot of attention is going to be shine on certain issues that were attempted to be swept under the rug. The biggest shift is going to be in the way in which people decide to govern themselves, and in the realization that people have been electing officials to positions of power over them, and that these officials, these governments, have been involved in international child trafficking rings. I think that's gonna cause some strife and some rebellion. It's gonna cause divide. And yes, I also do think there's gonna be a massive ascension in consciousness. I also do believe that those who have been on the spiritual journey will continue to excel in their gifts and their crafts. I know that us truthers, us way showers, were awakened to this information and these realities a little bit earlier because we knew this shift was coming, and that we're here to help facilitate the new reality that is coming in. The masses will wake up to the fact that there really is an international criminal cabal that rules over everyone. The masses will wake up to the fact that the people that they think is government are in fact not government, but corporations, and that they seek the corporations' interest over the people. That these corporations would rather bail out other corporations to the tunes of billions of dollars, while the masses starve, are forced to be jobless, and are facing homelessness at a rate in which we've never seen before. The biggest shift that is happening right now is between the institutions in which used to rule us, the churches, the governments, the courts, and the people coming to gnosis and choosing to govern their own mentals, govern their own minds, govern their own tribes, govern their own hearts. Connect, enlighten, ascend. Your soul tribe awaits. All right, NWAR all day. Pax et amor, infinite lucem. Peace.